Okay. I'll call this meeting of the committee to order. Are there any public comments? There are none. We'll move on to the second item in the agenda, committee work plan. Hillary, do we have any changes to the work plan?
Mr. Chairman, there's one change to the work plan, as Michael Radniciano mentioned at the Long Island Railroad Committee, that the bids for the contract for the Manhattan structures for the East Side Access project were rejected, and we're working on a plan to rebid that work. Also, Hurricane Sandy impacted the work on Harold interlocking by diverting necessary Long Island and Amtrak staff to work on reopening the East River tunnels. So as a result, by March, we'll have a better idea of the East Side Access project, and we'll have a comprehensive briefing then instead of today, which had been the original plan.
Okay. Is there any questions on that? Then if we're ready for item 3, the Long Island Railroad and the update on East Side Access readiness projects, Rich Oakley.
Microphone, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me move this up a little bit. Okay. Okay. I'll be providing you with an update today on the Long Island Railroad's East Side Access readiness projects. As you know, East Side Access is providing all the connecting track and tunneling that's required for Long Island Railroad to get to Grand Central Terminal. The East Side Access readiness projects are those projects that are taking place east of East Side Access that will provide the capacity for 24 trains per hour to get into Grand Central Terminal. The Long Island Railroad readiness projects will also add an immediate benefit to our operations in terms of capacity and reliability. These are the 5 essential East Side Access readiness projects. They are Jamaica Capacity Improvements, Phase 1, Great Neck Pocket Track and Colonial Road Bridge Replacement, Port Washington Yard Track Extensions, Massapequa Pocket Track, and Mid-Suffolk Yard. The scopes of these projects have been established with planning and design in progress. As you will see as we go through these slides, many of these projects will start construction this year.
Rich?
Yes, sir.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but just an important question about these. Are these projects based on a proposed service plan that you already have?
Yes. Yes.
So you already have a proposed service plan on how many trains on the Port Washington branch will be going to Grand Central, and the same with the Babylon branch and all of that?
Yes.
Has that been made public, that plan, yet? That service proposal?
We can certainly provide that, but yes, we do. There is a plan. It's all geared towards the opening day of East Side Access, which we have a service plan already in draft.
I never heard that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Could we get a copy of that, please?
Yeah,
Of course.
I think we'd all like a copy of it.
And have you, in the course of preparing that report, made any estimates at all as to the number of riders who would be served into Grand Central or out of Grand Central?
Yes. We could provide that
Right.
information.
There is a service plan that was part of the East Side Access EIS, and that's the full service plan that has the full extent of the service to East Side Access.
And you'd have in there the number of people that you believe would be served?
We have ridership forecast that's associated with that, yes.
I'd like to see that as soon as possible, please.
Okay.
You could just send everybody a copy of the environmental impact statement.
Yes, yes,
I
it's all in
read
there.
it 10 years ago. It's been around for a long
Yes.
time. I'm surprised people just think it's coming out of nowhere, but it's been there on record for 10
Is
years.
it still valid?
Yes.
It is valid, yes, yes.
Yes.
In fact, if it wasn't valid, they wouldn't be drilling.
These projects really came out of that process.
Okay. Okay. So as indicated, the
They're even funded.
yeah, that's right. I was going to say they're even funded. Thank you very much. They're even
Well,
funded.
just to the CIS that's old. I just want to clarify something. There were certain assumptions in it regarding how the Long Island Railroad would function and what projects there'd be. I don't know if these are all part of that, or what changes there's been?
These are,
Yes,
these are part of that.
They're part of that.
Yes.
Was also third track, mainline
Right,
third track was part of it as well.
Right, the double track as well, that was the full build-out, and these are the
Right.
ones that are needed to start our
And the mainline
service.
capacity increase too, that's not gonna happen in time, I think was part of the EIS as well.
The mainline capacity increase?
Yeah, wasn't it?
I'm
Was
not
that
sure
part
what-
of the EIS?
The third track.
Third
The third
track.
track project was part of the evaluation of the full build-out in the EIS, as was the double track.
okay.
The projects we're talking about today are the projects that will
Also.
be in place at the
At the
kickoff
ti-
of
right.
East Side Access, the others to be added over time.
Were
Okay.
there any assumptions made that you recall as to the percentage of aggregate Long Island Railroad users that would go out of the total to Grand Central as contrasted with Penn Central?
I don't have the specifics, but I do recall that the project itself induced a lot of demand and that there was convenience and trade-offs among the riders that currently use the Long Island Railroad. So you'd have new riders and you'd have existing riders that were picking among the two terminals.
This is just a general location of the projects. We have Jamaica Capacity Improvements, Phase 1, which is about 8 miles east of Harrell, where East Side Access construction is taking place. We have the Massapequa Pocket Track, which is on the Babylon branch just east of Massapequa Station. The Mid-Suffolk Yard, which is on our main line in vicinity of the Ronkonkoma Yard, the existing Ronkonkoma Yard. And then we have the other two projects are on the Port Washington branch, which is the Great Neck Pocket Track and the Colonial Road Bridge replacement, as well as the Port Washington Yard extension. So those are the general locations to give you an idea where they are. Yes.
Rich,
Yes, sure.
am I correct, and I think I read it somewhere, that the fact that MTA is rebuilding the Colonial Road Bridge is a sort of a agreement with the town of Great Neck Plaza for the inconvenience of extending the pocket track?
Well, I know that the bridge itself
No.
is 115 years old, so
Right,
it's
but that
it's
would hardly be
overdue
the
for replacement.
railroad's,
Right, but under bridge law, since it's 115 years old, that roadway that goes over the Long Island Railroad infrastructure is the Long Island Railroad's responsibility to maintain, to replace, because of the age of the structure. So we're replacing that. We'd have to replace it anyway. We're doing the pocket track, and we will change the footings of the bridge so that the pocket track extension can go through.
Andrew, it was always part of the project.
Yes, yes.
Oh, no, there was no, it was part of from before it became
Right.
open.
Yes. Okay, next slide. Okay. This is the Jamaica Capacity Improvements Project, Phase 1. This project was kicked off May last year. If you may recall, we made a presentation to the committee at that time. The Jamaica is a critical control point for 10 of the 11 branches on the Long Island Railroad. Phase 1 reconfiguration is reconfiguration of selected tracks plus a new platform. What we're showing here is Platform F. Okay, and with this new construction, we'll be able to get 40% additional capacity to Manhattan. Okay, the next slide, please.
Rich, before you
Yeah.
go on this one, that expansion of capacity to Manhattan, and I assume you mean both Grand Central and Penn,
Right.
comes at the expense of Brooklyn passengers, obviously.
If you're speaking about the one-seat ride, yeah. Yes.
Not only the one-seat ride, but the across-the-platform
Well,
transfer is
connection,
lost
right.
as well.
That's right.
So that means all of the new connection time has to be figured into scheduling because you have to go up, over, and down.
Right.
Right, it will be a scoot service, so it'll come up approximately every 7.5 minutes. So there won't be a direct connection, but there will not be a long wait for the Brooklyn service.
Norman?
Okay, as I said, we're looking to permit 40% additional throughput through Jamaica to Manhattan during peak periods. The new platform will service Brooklyn, which is what you had mentioned earlier. This will include track switches, signal reconfigurations required to eliminate the Brooklyn crossover routes, and there'll be universal switches which provide increased parallel moves out of Jamaica. Documents for design build for the initial civil and structural work is in progress, And as you can see, we're looking to have our 30% design completed by March of this year and start construction towards the latter part of this year. So we're moving ahead with this, and completion is January 2018. Next slide, please. Okay. This illustration was shown again last year when we first spoke about Jamaica, and as you can see, presently there's a lot of conflicting and crossover routes that preclude us from making parallel moves. It's very inefficient, okay, and the new configuration, which we'll show you right now, okay, will afford parallel moves. So you can see how much more efficient it is. This is done by using universal switches, okay, and doing some selective reconfiguration of the tracks. And as Elisa had mentioned, in addition to service to Manhattan, we'll be able to provide additional service to Brooklyn 7-minute intervals, as well as to the Barclays Center, okay, and we will accommodate service for the sporting events as well as the entertainment.
Rich?
Yes.
Does this mean Long Island City service is finished?
No, we're still going to have Long Island City service, yes. I'll continue.
Is there any basis to our ultimate fear that we will open 2 levels below Grand Central Station with below the lower level of Grand Central Station with a lobby plaza? The escalators will work perfectly. The tunnels up Park Avenue will be open and across the East River and will function perfectly, and the switches at Jamaica will fail. Any chance of that happening, do you think?
No. I don't know where that came from. Okay. The scope, Great Neck Pocket Track, will allow for turning of equipment and additional service on the Port Washington branch in support of East Side access. Design and construction elements include construction of a new 12-car pocket track and the much-needed replacement of the 115-year-old bridge at Colonial Road. The status, the environmental assessment and public comment period have been completed. 30% design is in progress and expected to be completed March 2013. The RFP for construction will be released April of this year. Okay, so we're moving along. Okay, the Port Washington Yard extensions. This project will consist of extending the tracks in Port Washington Yard to accommodate 18 additional cars. This increase in equipment capacity allows for additional overall service on the Port Washington branch and in support of East Side access. Can't read that part. Tracks can be extended using existing Long Island Railroad property. The technical scope of work is under development. Design start is January 2014. Construction start is January 2016 with completion, again, January 2018. Massapequa Pocket Track. As shown here, the Massapequa Pocket Track will be located between Massapequa Station and Massapequa Park Station. The scope. Design and construction of a new pocket track between Massapequa and Massapequa Park Stations will allow for turning equipment and additional service on the Babylon branch in support of East Side access. Major elements is the 1,700-foot long electrified track, additional bridge span to support the pocket track over Uncorp Creek. There are 3 new track switches and an interlock signal system that will be included. The status, bridge design complete. We're complete with the bridge design. It's now in fabrication. It was awarded last year, December of last year. And we're at 60% of the design for the pocket track is scheduled to be ready this month. We'll start construction March this year, which is just a couple of months away, and will be completed by November 2015. Mid-Suffolk Yard. This is the last of the 5 projects. This is Mid Suffolk Yard, design and construction of a new electric train storage yard consisting of 11 12-car capacity tracks on Long Island Railroad main line in Suffolk County. The new yard will provide increased east end train storage, provide additional interior car cleaning and mandatory FRA equipment inspections. The technical scope for this work is under development, and the design is scheduled to start January 2014. We're going out for a design build procurement RFP April 2015. Construction again is scheduled to be completed January 2018.
Am I correct? Do you have a location for this? A site?
Yes.
Right, we've done an alternatives analysis and we reviewed several locations. There is, we'll have to publicly vet that, but there are locations on railroad-owned property that do not require electrification. That'll have to go through a public process and the environmental review process, but there are some good candidate locations out there for us for this.
As I said earlier, these are the projects that are required for East Side Access
vetting
opening
process.
day, but it also will provide immediate benefit to our customers once they're completed. Any questions? Any more?
Question.
Yes, sir.
I'm sure you've considered this, and I'm sure it's not feasible because of the condemnation and the cost and everything, but was an assessment ever done to double-track the Port Washington branch east of Great Neck?
I'm not familiar that an assessment has been done, in the recent past, but we, you have that single
Obviously,
you have the single
yeah,
viaduct
exactly.
location there, which is, prohibitive.
That
But
would be
with the extended pocket track, we have now, 2 12-car pocket tracks for turning trains, which helps Great Neck and West, and
Right.
also helps seating capacity and free, express service for Port Washington and West.
One thing, that the original East Side Access project had a Sunnyside station, which was really in Long Island City. Right now, that's not part of the plan, correct? Or it's just not fun? What's the status of that?
I think right now, it still may officially be in the project plans, but that's something which we can talk about when we do the East Side Access briefing. It's not part of readiness.
Right, okay. And Andrew had asked a question about Long Island City staying open. I guess there's almost no trains that really go to Long Island City. It's a yard. There's a platform there, but I don't think there are many trains actually. Hunters Point is the station.
As Long Island City as well, it's a
Right,
station
there
there,
are
yes.
some scheduled
But you're right,
service,
it's
yeah.
not a heavy schedule, right.
We're not going to have less.
Not gonna-
Oh, you're going to continue that operation.
Yes, of course.
Continue the level of service.
And Hunters Point, that's something that should be thought about and discussed, because I don't see.
Right. Right now, there's no plan, to do anything at Hunters Point or to cease service there, but we will, of course, monitor
Don't you have major construction going on there, of residential facilities in Hunters Point?
No.
No?
Not that I'm aware.
It's a big shop.
JFK
Readiness projects?
Yeah,
Thank you. Now we're ready in tab 3 of your book, the update on the new fare payment system involving New York City Transit, LIRR, and Metro North. Jerry Page, Michael DeVito, Mark Young, and Bob McLaugher will be providing us the information. Please proceed.
Okay. My name is Jerry Page. I'm the Director of Strategic Initiatives at MTA headquarters. This is going to be an update on the new fare payment system initiatives at the Transit Authority and the commuter railroads. Since the last time that a status report was given to CPOC, there have been some important organizational changes to the new fare payments apparatus. Chairman Loda moved the project management team from, move from the headquarters to the agencies, principally based on a decision that responsiveness would be maximized if there were proximity to the agency's specific needs and circumstances. They also moved the headquarters staff that had been working on the initiative into the Transit Authority. And finally, Chairman Loda created a Fare and Toll Payment System Coordination Committee, the principal purposes of which are to ensure that when all the MTA agencies are moving forward on their initiatives, they're collaborating and following a set of common objectives, and also leveraging the initiatives that are being done at sister agencies. Turning the page. The common set of goals and objectives are both economic and non-economic. On the economic front, we're obviously pushing to decrease operational costs, also to minimize implementational impacts, both internally and for our customers. We want to cost-effectively accommodate the future fare policy changes. There'll be tremendous flexibility in these new systems. We also will be able to make changes much more quickly as operational needs merit. And finally, there may be an opportunity to use some of the new systems to leverage non-transit revenue opportunities and also increase customer benefits. On the non-economic side, and very important, is the effort to maximize interoperability between the agencies and other transportation systems by both using the same fare collection media, but also by having people be able to do all of their fare purchase transactions on a single application, whether it be on a mobile device or through their home computer. Finally, we want to focus on customer choice, customer convenience. As technology is moving forward, there are lots of opportunities for making things easier and adapting to what customers expect from their payments transactions. We also want to ensure equity for all customer groups and to comply with MTA and industry security standards. Going next page. There are some differences between the Transit Authority and the commuter railroads based on the different methodologies for what they want to achieve and what's in place currently. In the Transit Authority, we're now relying on the proprietary MetroCard system. It's a closed architecture network, and it has it's very reliable, and it's been resilient, but it is difficult to make software changes to, and is reaching the end of its useful life. The future systems that we're going to be looking at in the Transit Authority will be based on what we call open standard account-based contactless devices, and they'll be maximizing the use of devices that are distributed in other contexts, whether they be your credit and debit card from your bank, whether it be your mobile device, and we think there'll be new technologies that are emerging even as we're in the midst of these of the conceptual planning and design of the systems. On the commuter railroads, they're continuing the existing practice of full onboard inspection and collection of fares. A decision has been made that they will not gate the stations or require that consumers, the customers, do a tap in and a tap off. Both of those methodologies are done at other commuter railroads in this country, and the tap on, tap off is very common, particularly in the European railroad industry. The focus of the commuter railroads is to expand customer options, and they've been using smartphones to enable remote purchases, and also to have the ticket displayed as a barcode on the smartphone display, which interacts with the conductor. And finally, future strategies will continue this trend, and I think both transit and commuter railroads are very aware that this is a fast-moving environment, and we need to be agile as we move forward. I want to turn this side over to Mike DeVito from the Transit Authority to talk about the particular status of their program.
Mr. Chairman, do you want questions now, or do you want to, Mr. Chairman, do you want questions now, or do you want to wait?
If you have it specifically on this, why not?
Well, there seems to be a significant, unless I'm reading it incorrectly, difference between the purpose of doing this on the Transit Authority and the purpose of doing this on the commuter railroads, unless I'm reading the purposes incorrectly. On the Transit Authority, there seems to be both the purpose of making it easier to buy and making it easier to use. On the commuter railroads, because of the decisions you said were made, the only benefit is making it easier to buy, not necessarily making it easier to use, because there would still be, from number one, the existing practice of full onboard collection, unless I'm reading it incorrectly.
You're reading it correctly.
Okay, is there any reason?
Howard, do you want to add, Howard?
Mitch, the reason, to be clear, the ease of use on the commuter rail today is extremely easy. So it's what's being maintained is a system that's very customer-friendly based. And what's being added on, we talked a little about it this morning,
Right.
is much easier ways to buy tickets. And including credit and debit on the trains, and as well we talked about, you know, your ticket being your phone. Those are major steps forward. The other thing I would just add is both agencies, both transit and the two railroads, we all have a technology that has to be replaced, and there's a similarity
No
here.
matter what.
Right,
Right,
right.
no matter
We
what.
both have old machines that need replacement. I think that comes out in a little bit further.
Okay.
I mean, the obvious distinction between the two is a gated versus a non-gated
Right,
system.
right.
And the infrastructure investment already made and the nature of fare collection at the Transit Authority has historically been a hard point of demarcation, fare paid, fare non-paid. That's not been the case in commuter rail. So, and it's been verification of fare paid.
Now, now maybe you get to it later, and I apologize if but obviously one of the issues all the agencies have faced is non-collection of fares by people using the system. Is this system or any future system intended to counteract, is one of the purposes to counteract that issue also? And how do we do that?
Mark Young. I would say certainly in an ungated system as a commuter rail, that's a bigger challenge.
Right.
As you know, revenue protection is one of our highest priorities. So as we go through, included in the specs, both in the onboard handhelds, which we'll get to in a second, and the mobile ticketing project, there are a series of requirements and requests from the respondents to show us what proposals they would have to build into their system that would help us be able to the greatest extent possible protect the fares, whether it's protecting the zone travel or the like. But as it was just mentioned before, we're still maintaining the goal of 100% on board validation. Maybe Bob, you want to add something?
Mitch, I'll just add, one of the ongoing goals of both railroads is to reduce the number of people who end up on a train without a ticket. And we think the mobile ticketing app and with it, the ability to, like if you're going to a movie or a sporting event, to be able to print your ticket at home and show up with a ticket before you get on the train is just another great way in the modern age of reducing the number of people who show up at a station, and then even if they show up at the station, board a train without a ticket, because you'll be able to either buy it on your phone standing on the platform, or you'll be able to print it out on impulse. You know, I'm going to travel today, as opposed to now with our web applications where it takes 3 to 5 business days for a ticket to arrive at your house. So this will be a big step up in that regard.
So the intent is, the hope is, the goal is that the ease of purchase, which is clearly a benefit, will enable many people who now, cheat is a good word, take something which they haven't paid, might be a different word, will make it easier for us, make it easier for them to do it, therefore reduce our loss. That's the intent.
Correct.
Or one of the intents.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. No.
use, the overarching goal of interoperability amongst the agencies makes it easier for commuters to use it once they hit the subway or bus. And I think that that goal is definitely met for any technology that's common amongst us.
I think the other aspect of that, and that is absolutely correct, obviously, you know, the phase out of this system is a period of time. The goal of many of us is to substantially increase ridership on Long Island, from one point on Long Island to another point of Long Island, without hitting any of the other agencies or having the city aspect of it. So how we relate that to this new system will be very important also, because the goal is to have a lot more people take shorter trips, but have them take it on the railroad as opposed to having them take it in their car. And pay for it, which would obviously be helpful. Yes.
Do I understand that once the commuter gets on the railroad in the middle of the 21st century, he will be met by a conductor with a ticket punch, just as he was at the beginning of the 19th century, and that there's no electric scanning aboard that you plan on board for the tickets?
Or actually, it will be an electronic validation, so, you know, which we'll get to in a second. We'll have these onboard handheld devices, and our hope is that the mobile ticketing application will be very successful, accepted by the customers. They'll have barcode, many won't have paper tickets anymore. They'll have a barcoded image on a mobile device or the like. On request, they'll display that, and there'll be a validation by the train crew. So we hopefully will be moving away to a great degree from paper tickets.
Thank you. So I'm Mike DeVito from New York City Transit, and I'm here to present the next 6 slides in the deck. These next 6 slides include information about what New York City Transit's plans are as far as a new fare payment system. It's helpful, I think, at this point to move back and just to provide the context with which we're developing this new fare payment system, answering the question of why are we even pursuing one. So I think everybody would agree that by most measures, the MetroCard system, the current fare collection system, has been successful. 8 million swipes a day, relatively few issues. But it's 20 years old. Now, when it was developed and built, it was clearly innovative. And it led to transformational changes in the way we operate and in the way customers get around the city. But equipment is reaching the end of its life. It's becoming increasingly expensive and in some cases impossible to maintain and enhance, especially given the proprietary nature of the system. So what we need to do is use similar innovative thinking in the development of our new fare payment system that we use for MetroCard that would lead us to new transformational changes in the way we operate and in the way our customers use the system. So for our system, we've identified 4 basic building blocks. Contactless payments technology, customers tapping at the turnstile, not swiping, less moving parts and equipment. Open architecture, not proprietary like most transit agencies' fare collection systems today. Account-based. Payment industry standards, leveraging already existing, widely adopted financial services processes and protocols.
Mike, I'm sorry. I'm surprised you didn't highlight some of the obvious problems with MetroCard, which is swipes are failing because magnetic stripes are failing. They only have a fixed life. We have to hire people to clean the turnstiles to make them work. There's a fixed life on each card. People are disposing of cards, which is why the $1 additional fee is coming on. It's just so many good reasons to get rid of MetroCard.
Yeah. Thanks, Andrew. I mean, I'm trying to, be brief, but you're absolutely correct. We've got a system today that has heavy infrastructure. We've got 2,200 vending machines, 2,250 vending machines located around the city that require maintenance, cash collection, cash handling, trying to think about a smarter way to do our business, collect fares in a different way to maybe decrease some of that burden. Okay, since our pilots in 2006 and 2010 and some of our original studies, there have been significant changes in the payments landscape. And chief among these changes has been the unavailability of bank-issued contactless cards. Now, these are credit and debit cards issued by banks to customers that have a tiny computer chip embedded inside them. Now, we originally thought that these contactless cards issued by banks would be widely distributed and in wide use today. That's not the case. Retail merchants, did not deploy the equipment to accept these contactless cards because they didn't see the value in it. Customers didn't see the value in using these contactless cards. And so banks did not issue these cards, at least not in the numbers that we need for our scale. Other changes. So we've got technology advances that are driving new alliances, especially in payments. At one time, it was a very simple landscape, especially as far as electronic payments. 4 main players: MasterCard, Visa, Amex, and Discover. Today, we see Google, Amazon, PayPal, and a host of others, especially with regard to mobile payments. It's creating a more fragmented, more complex payments landscape. And of course, the growth of mobile payments and everything that smartphones allows us. So what have these changes meant for us at New York City Transit? Well, I think at this point it's helpful to recall back what our previous tactical plan was, and that was to develop and implement a completely new system based on these bank-issued contactless cards within the 2012-2015 timeframe. But since most of our customers don't have in their possession as yet these contactless bank-issued cards, we cannot achieve our goals and objectives the way we initially thought. At the same time, we can't continue to maintain our current system in a state of good repair beyond 2019. So we're continuing to actively work towards implementing a new system within the next 3 to 5 years. And within this changed landscape, our tactical approach is now a phased approach within the current MetroCard State of Good Repair Plan window. Build out a contactless acceptance infrastructure, derive additional value from previous investments, layer in the new technology, and still allow for customer choice. Where possible, dovetail with existing State of Good Repair plans. Develop a mobile payment strategy and implementation. Okay, moving forward, what are some of our next steps? So we're currently refreshing our previous analyses, and we're looking to develop an updated tactical approach, an updated economic model for a new fare payment system that incorporates a complementary mobile strategy. At the same time, we're continuing to build out our telecommunications network. We've allocated $32 million to perform telecoms work that's required to support these new systems. We're monitoring industry developments and learning lessons from other agencies' recent efforts. And we're updating a roadmap to a new fare payment system, which we will be ready to share with you at the next CPOC briefing.
Whatever became of the city card sponsored, tap card test that was being done on the Lex line?
So yeah, some of the results were really positive. So we actually had 2 phases to the pilot, one in 2006 and then one in 2010. The 2006 pilot was solely for city card members, and they were MasterCard holders. In 2010, we opened it up to all issuers. We included MasterCard as well as Visa in that pilot. And the results were very, very promising. We proved that contactless payments could work in our environment. We proved that we could leverage existing financial services processes. All of that was good. I think the crux of the problem, the crux of the issue, is that the original premise of contactless bank cards being out there in the marketplace, already in customers' hands, did not come true. Again, back to Board Member Palley's, comment before, what we're trying to do is really utilize systems, both the commuter railroads as well as us, that at their core utilize devices, contactless cards, mobile phones that customers already have, that we don't need to support with a huge infrastructure for distribution and production.
My initial, when we discussed this many years ago, it was thought that the MTA's chip could be in a debit card or a credit card, which customers do have in great numbers. Has that plan gone away?
Well, customers, I'm going to be clear, customers don't today, in large measure, have these chip cards. There are some, there's no doubt, but not in large scale. That's issue number one. I think our original
Michael,
thinking...
wasn't the idea we were going to let somebody else invest in that infrastructure and
Yeah.
somebody else basically handle that part of it, and it never materialized?
Yeah, I mean, that was one part of it, but it's a really important point that Andrew brings up. I mean, the fact is that we want to, where possible, as much as we can, leverage the standard processes and not get involved with customized solutions, like an MTA chip in a credit card.
Now, just on 6th Avenue and across the river, Path has a contactless card, and I believe they're still using cubic turnstiles, if I'm not mistaken.
It's a really good point, you know, and it's a point that I referenced earlier, maybe not so completely though. Today, most transit agencies that have a smart card system have contactless devices. There's no question.
No question.
But they're proprietary. That's what we're trying to move away from.
Okay, yeah, back to the commuter rails. It was on slide 11. Just a quick preface. You know, this has been a great project for the two railroads. We've been working together for several years. You know, a lot of what we're going to be talking about, all of it is a joint effort. We'll be releasing the same devices, the same mobile technology. So it's a great project. And when we first started this in 2008 or so, you know, we were dealing with many questions. Of course, the challenge of an ungated system. Also, there's really not much of a precedent anywhere in the United States, the world, particularly no railroads of our size, of implementing this type of mobile technology, e-ticketing, et cetera. So, you know, there was a lot of uncertainty back then, and we're basically at the point where within the next 18 months, there's really going to be a dramatic change in the customer experience for the better. It's really going to revolutionize their experience and, you know, really meet that, what someone mentioned before. You know, customers every day, every month are coming to expect more and more from technology, and we need to keep up with that. The expectation is higher. So I think these projects really go a long way towards accomplishing that. You'll see at the bottom of the slide, what we're going to talk about today are really the two key initiatives that we'll be rolling out over the next 2 years. And both of them are built on successful pilots that each of the railroads conducted. The first I'll speak about, which is the new onboard handheld devices that will be ticket issuing machines and validating machines. And then Bob McGlager will talk about the mobile ticketing application that will be released at the same time. So we can move ahead. So the onboard ticket issuing machines, you can see on the slide here on the left, we talk about what's currently been done, and then on the right, what we're proposing. Many of you know, riders of Metro North know that several years ago, and since 2008, Metro North deployed fully system-wide handheld devices to their train crews, and they've been accepting cash fares on board, been a success. And as mentioned, though, even those machines are now reaching their end of their useful life, so Metro North's been thinking about, and it needs to replace those. At Long Island Railroad, we've conducted our own pilot, which was a more limited pilot. We developed and deployed 19 handheld devices over the last 2 years, which not only accepted cash, but they also accepted credit card and pinless debit card sales. So we did expand those options. Was a big success with our customers. This is an example of that type of device which we deployed over the last 2 years. It's an iPhone in a cradle with a printer attached to it, so that the conductor could process a ticket sale, produce the receipt, etc. It was successful, but like any pilot, we learned things, and with input from the train crews, we've learned that there are some things we can improve, which are the next generation devices, which you see discussed on the right of this page. So what we're doing now is we're basically moving in together as both railroads to design and procure, design, and deploy a single device that would be deployed both railroads. We're talking about an iPhone device with a wireless printer. So this is an example, and if anybody later wants to see a demonstration of this, we can do a demonstration later. But basically, each train crew will have a handheld device like this. They'll have a wireless printer attached to probably their waist, and would be able to process tickets in that manner. Now, the key advancement here is that, in addition to the convenience, is that we will go further than just credit, debit, and cash. So we're designing these devices so that they will also be able to accept other modes of payment in the future, such as contactless cards, barcoded electronic tickets that Bob McGlager will speak to in a second, and even NFC technology. Some of you may have, a tapping technology. So we're really building these devices for the future. We're also building them so we know that as New York City Transit comes along, they'll be interoperable with the options that New York City Transit selects. So as you can see here, Long Island Railroad will be expanding its pilot deployment to 50 devices this summer with the new device. And then by the end of 2014, both railroads will be deploying these devices, begin deploying them system-wide.
Sounds to me, though, that what you're doing is shifting the burden from the consumer to the conductor. And so the conductor will have less time available to go through the train, make sure everybody's paid, because he's going to be standing, or she's going to be standing there with a machine, and the printer will be coming out of his butt, and he'll be taking care of all of that. He'll be taking all of his time doing that. Why is that in our interest?
Well, there's several pieces to this. First of all, we are trying to remove cash from the system. So one of our goals here, by offering different modes of payment, mobile ticketing, NFC, credit and debit, will be moving people, even those who are purchasing tickets on board, we would be using an electronic transaction and get out of the business of exchanging dollars, coins, etc. I think that's one advantage and one way to expedite the transaction process. But I do want to stress, as we discussed before, we do consider it a high priority to continue to protect revenue. So, none of this project has a goal to do less validation on board. So that is an important point.
But right now you charge a penalty for a transaction on board. You'd still do the same here, right?
Well, we're working on that because we have to design the mobile ticketing design, for an example, for cash sale or credit and debit. That would be our anticipation.
Well, you just don't want to unknowingly cross a threshold. It costs you more to sell a fare on board a train than it does through a third party or through a ticket window or through a machine.
It will still cost you more to buy a ticket. Assumptions on the train.
No, it'll cost us more to sell the ticket is what I'm saying. But you also want to make sure there's a disincentive for them to buy the fare on board.
There will still be. But to Mr. Miller's point, we for 4 years have had the handheld devices in use, and we did an extensive pilot. And to one of your points, we made sure that the time it takes to sell a ticket with the handheld device is not longer than it was to punch a bunch of holes in a piece of paper and then handle the cash. Part of that is you gain time with the credit card transaction can be quicker than the time it takes to handle the cash, but the time it takes to print out a ticket is certainly no longer than the time it was to take dollar bills and coins from a person, make change, and hand the money back.
Yeah, Charlie, if I'd add to that, we did a time and motion study last summer in Grand Central looking at this exact question, because our concern was just what you said, that it would take longer and we need more people on the train. To what Bob's saying is that it takes no longer than it does today to sell a ticket or to punch a ticket. So we're not adding time by going this route. We're not adding any additional time to the workloads of the train crews. And that's why we did the study last summer.
Could I ask one important? Oh.
Isn't a key to this to find a way in and by which the customer can A, obtain some vehicle in and by which it can pay, B, that vehicle can be registered so that you make sure that you receive revenue, and C, that you ultimately collect on that revenue, right?
Right.
So my question is, why is it that we do not have some method by which you can buy a weekly, a monthly, or some kind of a ticket or pass or the like, and do that rather than having this whole array of you got to print it, you got to add it, you got to go home and do it. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, this is
That's for people who don't
Right.
buy the monthly, a 10 trip. But this
That's
won't.
right.
I
No,
have
it's
another thing-
monthly and weekly.
Monthly, weekly,
This
or-
would be the same for 10 trips. Any
I mean,
punch
you could
ticket
buy
would be the same.
the idea that you buy a 10 trip on board.
No, this here, I mean, those are some of the things, Ira, you
we
have to
think
work,
about,
you have
right.
to think that
Yeah.
out. But
But-
you're not doing away with the visual inspection of
Right, the
monthly,
conductor
weekly
has to go
tickets.
through the train, but does
Right.
this make it, the question that Commissioner Merdler and I'd like to, and I think that's coming around here is, does this make it easier for the conductor to move through the train more quickly? And I don't know what that answer is, and what you said by your time study is that it's no worse.
Right.
But it may not be any better. I don't know. We hope it's better.
I think this would be useful to then go on to the next slide.
Okay.
'Cause we're going to talk about, if Mark's done.
But I have one quick question before you leave. This is the ability to use this iPhone device and print a ticket predicated on you having cellular service where you are at that moment?
No.
No.
What will happen is, in terms of the processing of fare payment, it's like a batch. There'll be a batch processing of payment when a device reaches, cell service connectivity.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
This offers convenience for the customer.
Yeah.
Okay, the handheld devices on the train is very much linked to this next slide. We're talking about mobile ticketing and developing mobile ticketing apps for the two railroads so that people on their mobile device can purchase a ticket that then has a visual barcode on the screen that the conductor with his handheld device will just be able to scan rather than reading the manual information and manually punching paper tickets. Both railroads did pilots during 2012. Long Island Railroad did one on Long Island as part of the U.S. Open at Bethpage. Metro North, with the firm Misabi, did an in-house pilot with employees in Grand Central, simulating transactions on trains. Both railroads have issued an RFP that went out this month for develop a mobile ticketing system for the two railroads that includes the bullet you see on the right-hand side. It's a mobile application for ticket purchase. The mobile app will also provide basic trip planning information to the customer in terms of train schedules, etc. This will have a print-at-home option. As I mentioned earlier, we currently have web ticket, but it takes 3 to 5 business days for a ticket to be printed in a remote location and sent to your home. You'll now be able to go on to an associated web app to this mobile app, and basically just like you can do for Fandango or one of the sporting events, the Mets and Yankees, you can print your tickets at home. And again, there'll be a barcode you show to the conductor. He scans it with the handheld device on the train. One-way round trips and 10 trips initially. We're not looking to replace our visually inspected monthlies and weeklies because the visual inspection is a much faster processing rate on the trains than any kind of transaction where the conductor and the customer have to exchange anything. As part of this, there's a fare engine, it's called, the back end. There's the financial reconciliation software that has to be developed to connect into our existing systems. So the back office, all of that takes, it's from our standpoint, we want to make sure financial controls are on all this, and we're not, and we have tight control of all the money that's going to go through this. So we're looking at this stuff rolling out to the customers as part of a pilot for in the second quarter of next year, and full system rollout by the time you get to the end of the summer next year. Now, back to some of the comments made earlier, to the extent that one of the options here is, particularly with the, I'll say, people younger than me, the mobile ticketing apps are becoming all the rage for buying food, going to fast food restaurants, for going to sporting events, going to the movies, etc. Our feeling is that this will help further reduce the number of people, particularly in those age brackets, who get on the train in don't care as much about the $6 as much as time, that they don't want to get a ticket at the station. So they can get their ticket on the way to the station or after they've arrived at the station while they're waiting on the platform. It helps us with revenue collection on the train. We also feel, based on the tests we've done and the tests that Long Island's done, and we're part of a pilot that New Jersey Transit's doing right now on the Pascagoula Valley line, that this will certainly not increase the workload on the trains. And we feel, hopefully, we're hoping that this works very smoothly as our employees get used to it, and it becomes very a time-effective way of collecting revenue on the trains.
You guys might be really
there
onto
is-
something here. You know what? They could have credit cards on your iPhone. You wouldn't even have to carry a credit card anymore. Just some way of identifying you.
The app will allow you to.
Yeah.
I mean, the app will allow you to set up an account where for repeat customers, where it charges the account you set up, and you just say, "Give me," hopefully it'll just be a one-button transaction where give me another ticket from Tarrytown to Grand Central.
Mr.
It'll remember
McClaggett,
your popular choices.
There is such an app, that's standard operating feature on the iPhone 5. It's called Passbook. That one app allows me to board a plane with the ticket to show it, buy coffee at Starbucks, get theater tickets, and even use coupons. It's right here. Everybody who's got the iPhone 5 has it. I don't understand what we're doing here.
Let me ask a question, or try to, in any case, that might get some clarity, if not now, in the very near future. My impression of this was that it was intended to shift essentially the infrastructure costs away from us, and somebody saves in that transaction. It's unclear to me from this colloquy who is saving.
I will say that as we roll this out in 2014, and the next slide we're going to talk about further down the road, the purchase of the next generation of ticket machines that we deploy both for humans behind the windows and on platforms. Our hope is that the mobile ticketing app becomes a popular enough option with our customers that the next generation of hardware we deploy system-wide will be less costly and frankly less extensive than the current generation is, because more people will be using their own device they own to buy tickets, and we won't be having ticket machines for people to line up on platforms to buy
Bob, when
tickets
you
as
use
often.
words like hope and you say we intend,
same thing.
that causes a little concern in some people's minds. And for those that have tried to offload, you take a look at sporting arrangements, you take a look at Madison Square Garden, where they've tried to change the dynamic of selling tickets and move it away. They not only create incentives to do it, but disincentives to go back to the old behaviors. And that's the concern, I think. That's one of the concerns, is because if you still allow the ability to buy fare media on board the train and you still have to crew, you've got a substantial sunken cost in terms of crewing.
Just Freddie, I mean, we can kind of lay this out a little more. The intent of the strategy was not to have significant savings in terms of cost savings. To Tom's point, it was looked at that you do have a fundamental sunken cost. There will be some savings in terms of buying less machines. We don't need as many ticket sellers if we switch over to that. And it's also to allow us, there should be certain impacts in how customers behave and people behave. So, for example, there would be, both railroads have issues of people not paying tickets, with all kinds of impacts on the operation when you call the police, etc. This makes it easier for people who honestly want to pay because you have another way of doing it. They could do it immediately. By taking credit debit cards, you take the confrontation of the higher onboard fare, which is a significant issue. You would reduce that because it's easier, again, to people pay. There are a host of behavioral things which really went to a customer service goal as much as it did to a savings goal. And that underlies this.
Norman, did you have a?
Yeah, it's, I'm just pointing out here that our experience with the other fare elements of the system, the two big ones being MetroCard and EasyPass. And when EasyPass was introduced, they initially did it through like market aggravation, where they just eliminated the cash toll takers and made people wait in line and aggravated people into going over to EasyPass. but you know, that too took about 20 years of gestation too, because now you see where the new fare market is that we've structured in the bridges and tunnels is to punish people financially for continuing to be stupid enough to go through the cash lane. And those sort of things have a whole lot greater social push than the sort of, I mean, savings is savings. We want to make savings wherever we can, but if there isn't that sort of hammer on the how you're using it, it doesn't have the same sort of market impact that the other innovations have.
I expect we'll be hearing more about this at another meeting, because there is still unanswered, still a lack of clarity on some issues. But let's proceed.
The last slide, and I don't think we need to spend too much time on this, the current generation of hardware that we started putting in service in 2001 will be, with the life cycle maintenance we now have in place with the vendor, we can maintain that in a state of good repair through 2018. So we will be looking in a 2014 horizon, start developing the spec for our next generation of ticket selling hardware that's deployed at stations, on the property. And we would look to purchase that in a 2015 to 2019 capital program. One of the key elements of that we wanted to mention here is the fact that we currently, in the current generation, have joint tickets with New York City Transit using the mag stripe MetroCard, but because of the timing of when we purchased hardware and when New York City Transit purchased hardware, it's a pre-encoded MetroCards. It's still TBD what instrument would be provided in the next generation of railroad hardware for selling a joint instrument with New York City Transit, based on some of the open issues with regard to what the fare media is going to be beyond 2019 and into the 2020s, when this equipment would probably be in service until probably 2030 and beyond.
So far, you're only mentioning Metro North and Long Island Railroad for these. Would you consider having this usable on Staten Island Railway? Sure. Where there is, no fare between Tompkinsville and Tottenville?
Yes, the answer is yes, Andrew.
And it would work. It would be fine. It would be interchangeable, I assume.
You would just have, like you have two different tariffs for the two railroads, you'd need a third tariff that you'd load into those machines for a third railroad.
Okay.
I think, at least from my perspective, the concept is fantastic. Of that there is no doubt. It's something we have to get to. The issue is how, to some degree, as Norman said, do we change people's human nature in what they're going to do? There's nothing worse for those of us who get on the train than to have some conductor stop and have to sell a cash ticket to somebody who doesn't know where they're going. That is the worst thing possible, okay? Because everybody behind them is now waiting for that transaction to happen, or likely not happen in a orderly fashion, which we all know it doesn't happen in an orderly fashion most of the time. So for those people who either have their own ticket or are ready to go, there is no question that this will be better. I guess the goal is, from what you said, is the hope is that by providing new options for people to buy a ticket other than a machine or on the train, you could, I guess, stand on the platform while the train is coming, buy your ticket, and save the $7 or whatever it's going to be that you'd have to buy when, and if we, it's just to some degree the Easy Pass issue. Correct. We're going to aggravate people enough to say, buy the sign. If you buy the ticket now, it's $10. If you buy it in 5 minutes, it's $17 or whatever the differential is.
Mitch, that's exactly.
And that's the point.
Right, that's the point, and that's what that the railroads did jointly when we raised the onboard fare 8 years ago, whenever it was, and we grossly had 90% fewer onboard fares, which took a huge amount of staff time. So it's exactly the same method we previously
or for people who only have cash, or the vice versa, you give them options.
We're done.
Yeah. I agree.
Now, we're ready, I think, for the quarterly update on MWDE participation
Mike?
Thanks, Freddie. Gwen Harrelson is going to give us a brief overview of the MWDBE metrics for the past year. It's a good story that's evolving into a great story. So, Gwen?
Okay. Overall, DBE participation is at approximately 15%. The chart is in your booklet. Okay. DBE participation remains below the 17% goal as a result of the specialized nature of work being performed by the prime contractor. During the fourth quarter, there were 2 contracts in which the prime had to perform a substantial amount of the work. New York City contract number S32769, totaling $194.1 million, was for the modernization of the signal systems of 71st Avenue and Union Turnpike. The prime had to perform the core of the signal work, which include design, installation, testing, and placing the in-service signal equipment. The core signal work consisted of 42% of the contract, so the prime had to do a large portion of the contract. DBE participation on that particular contract is at 10%. Long Island Railroad also had another contract number 6074, totaling $8.9 million, and that contract was for replacement of Hillside and Kew Garden substations, which include assembling and the delivery of a prefabricated modular substation. The prime was required to perform 80% of the design or manufacturing drawings for the project. DBE participation on this particular contract was at 13.6%. As of December 31st, 2012, MWBE participation continued to exceed its 20% goal. MWBE participation is at the end of 2012 was at 31.3%, 16.3% is MBE, and 15.0% is WBE. During 2012, MTA provided MWDBEs with approximately $157 million of additional contracting opportunities. MWBEs working on federally funded contracts received $81.8 million in awards, and DBEs working on state-funded contracts received $74.8 million in awards. As you know, New York State will allow MTA to take credit on MWBEs working on federally funded contracts.
Thanks, Gwen. Let me also say that we are extremely excited with the unveiling of our federal program, which will allow us to go out and recruit smaller firms, including DBE firms, as a way of boosting our numbers up with respect to contract awards to DBEs. It is always better for the agency or the owner to allow firms to work to us as prime contractors, as opposed to the smaller M and WDB firms working as subcontractors. So we are going to be in control of our own destiny with respect to affording these small firms prime contract opportunities. We are on target to award the first project in the program during the first quarter. Let me also thank Charles Hanson and also Tony Bombay for being the first out of the box to basically to have a program that's going to be bidded, and that's Metro North. Also basically we need to be extremely focused in a very, very hands-on manner to ensure that on the restoration projects that we are going to be bidding out, that there are going to be a strong focus on MW and DBE inclusion. And we've met with the various agencies and transit, as transit goes, the MTA goes, based upon the volume of projects that we will be awarding in the restoration projects. And so we are going to be extremely serious in a hands-on, effective manner to make sure that there is going to be MW and DB inclusion. And finally, the rolling stock area is a MWB growth area. Historically, our subway and bus manufacturers have asked for goal waivers and goal reductions. And after having conversations with the Chrysler Group, GM, and Ford, who, as you know, have awarded billions of dollars to minority-owned firms since the late 1960s, we are taking a real zero tolerance towards waiving goals in the area of our subway buses and rail car manufacturers.
Comments or?
Just one thing, Mike, you and I have talked before about the issue of including in the staff summaries information about MBE, WBE goals met by a contractor who has had a prior contract with us, so that we would know when we award the contract whether they met their goals the first time, second time, third time, however many times they've had. And we've talked about the status of that so that we could see it directly. Is there any progress, or where are we in that process at the moment? Because I noticed the staff summaries have not, to the large degree, included that information.
It is my understanding that we are currently doing that. All of the agencies, they are including their previous MW and DB results, and we are ensuring that they are being written up in the staff summaries.
I have not seen them in the staff summaries. I would request that they be separated from the narrative in its own little category, because after you've read 3 pages of the narrative, you kind of stop.
Right.
And it may be there, you just don't see it to the eye should be. So I would request if we could include that in the staff summary as a separate category, indicating, this company had a prior contract in 2010. Mm-hmm. They had a goal of 20%. They only met 10%, or they met 25%. Whatever the response is, because that way I think it will give the board members a much quicker way of deciphering the information.
Got it. Done. It's done.
Thank you.
All right.
And thank you, Mike. Thank you very much. Commend your work, and though she has gone, the work of Susan Metzger whilst she was chair of the Diversity Committee. Thank you. Finally, behind tab 5, Hillary Ring will give us the status of our capital program.
Thank you, Freddie. We're reporting on 57 major commitments for 2012. 28 were delivered on or near goal, 11 were late, and 18 are still pending and not yet achieved. Through December, agencies have committed $4.6 billion versus a goal of $7.3 billion. And the reason for the slippage are some big projects. 2 East Side Access commitments, which we alluded to today. That's worth $1.1 billion in commitments, and $715 million in bus commitments were delayed because of the whole issue with Orion going out of business and having to re-look at the bus strategy. On completions, we're reporting on 55 major projects for 2012. 31 were delivered on or close to goal. 11 were late but completed nonetheless, and 13 other major projects are still in the works. We've completed $5.3 billion versus the goal of $5.8 billion, so the completion is actually doing pretty well. Some of the slippage was $210 million in transit stations, and again, some bus purchases. So that's the quick summary.
Any questions or comments? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second. All in favor? Meeting is adjourned.
Am I the only voter left? He was the only one to second. Bob and I are voters. Right?
Thank you, Ren.